Hi, I'm Marley.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Evelyn.
Trash, noun. Slang for someone who enjoys the uncool, objectively bad, and or the unpopular. Synonyms: nerd, geek, dork. Originally an insult similar to geek and nerd.
So I decided to do some first-person research about how mental health disorders are portrayed in the media. I contacted a few psychologists through email and interviewed some people in real life and talked to a film teacher about film in general and how they represent not only mental health disorders, but also just stereotypes in general, like gender stereotypes and racial stereotypes. So first, I will talk about a survey I had a few classes take to see what a general group would know about mental health disorders. So a majority of them think that the most accurate forms of entertainment for like mental health disorders are books and movies and TV shows. And then the least accurate are comics and video games and stuff like that. Most people didn't know much about schizophrenia or psychosis or autism or PTSD or OCD. And most people knew about depression and anxiety and alcoholism and that kind of stuff. And the general opinion was that schizophrenia and psychosis are the least represented in education or entertainment, and along with PTSD, OCD, and autism. So there's a correlation between what's most known and what's most represented in the media. And the least accurately, it was about the same for a lot of them, other than anxiety and eating disorders. So most of them were about equal, about 30 people. And most of the people who took this survey have dealt with a mental health disorder themselves or have known someone who has. So after doing this initial research, I decided to contact professionals. So I contacted about psychosis and schizophrenia and how that's portrayed. And they said that mostly it's portrayed as violent and they don't show the different symptoms because there's positive symptoms and negative symptoms. And it doesn't mean bad or good. It just means about how well they can do something, like how easy it is for them to fit into society or like to accomplish something. So like negative symptoms aren't always shown. And also psychosis and schizophrenia are usually stigmatized, and the portrayals in media usually involve like merciless killers and stuff. And then they say that the reason they kill people is because of something like schizophrenia. And then they don't really go in depth and they just use it as a plot point, like as a plot device. And then that leads people to think that people with schizophrenia and psychosis are like that in real life and that they're all like that. And then I also contacted a professor about how OCD is treated, because OCD can be used as like as joke a lot of the time. And he talked about how like a lot of the symptoms of OCD aren't shown, and then it's kind of just like dramatized, like the rituals and how they're portrayed and how it's like used as like a joke, and it doesn't really show the negative symptoms of OCD. And then lastly, my live interviews, which some I have recorded, we're mostly talking about the issue in general and how it affects people, because it makes the general population think that everyone who has a mental health disorder is that way in real life, especially like if it's shown to like younger people. And that can have a lasting effect on the stigma of mental health. So it's very relevant in schizophrenia and psychosis because those are usually used for plot devices, for merciless killers, and for like depression or something. It's not always shown like that they get better or that they're more than just their depression. And there's a lot of one-note characterization, and Evelyn will go into more detail about that. And yeah, and something like, and it can just be helpful for people to have like a positive role model in the media and for other people to know that, like, not every person with a mental health disorder is the same person.
Yeah.
So I found an article on Psych Central going into detail about how not only mental health or people with mental health issues are stigmatized, but also mental health professionals are stigmatized and shown to be inaccurate or like just bad at their jobs. So it kind of creates a climate where people think that mental health professionals won't actually help with mental health, which is also very harmful.
Yeah, good point. So I remember a good example of this was I played this one video game. I cannot remember what it is. I'll probably look it up and put it in our blog later. But
So kind of a contrast between pretty good representation, I would say, and pretty terrible representation, I would say, would kind of be exemplified by kind of Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory and Symmetra from Overwatch. Both characters canonically have autism, I believe. Did they officially confirm that they were making fun of autistic people with Sheldon, or did they just want to leave that up to interpretation? Because we have to fact check if they actually made Sheldon autistic. But what we do know is that it makes people with autism not like him.
Yeah, he's not officially, but the actor says his character seems to exhibit some Asperger-like.
So, like, while his character doesn't canonically have autism, he was portrayed enough as of a stereotype to anger people who do have autism, which is, I think, is, if you don't even make that character have that mental condition, and people with that condition are saying, hey, this is bad representation, and you didn't even try to represent anything, you've messed up very bad. So then there's Symmetra from Overwatch, who in a comic released by Blizzard refers to herself as on the spectrum, and then was later confirmed by a writer that she is in fact autistic. And there is a stark contrast between these two characters. While both are capable academically, Symmetra exhibits more symptoms in a way that I feel is less alienating. In the comic, before she officially mentions in her narration that she is on the spectrum, she is shown having trouble making eye contact with people in meetings, getting distracted by small details around the room, feeling uncomfortable in a crowd, and then having to be escorted out. And these are all actual symptoms of autism as opposed to caricatures of symptoms. And then in the narration, she refers to herself as on the spectrum. And she says that this used to bother her, but it doesn't anymore because it means she can do things other people can't do. And the reason I feel like this is good is because it doesn't erase the fact that she has autism. It's not saying despite autism, she's succeeding. It's because of the way she is, and because of this specific part of her identity, surrounded with other parts of herself, she is able to do things, and instead of it being, oh, she overcame an obstacle, it's part of who she is, and it aids her in her personal journey. Whereas Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory is basically a caricature of somebody with autism having trouble interacting socially in a way that's played off for comedic effect, and it just leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. So, like, the difference is definitely that one character was made specifically to be funny and to be laughed at, and another character was made to be a respected person, academically capable, and frankly portrayed as an adult instead of a naive child. A good example of how badly mental health is portrayed in media is the fact that I was looking at multiple characters to comment on how well they were represented, and for most categories I could find a corresponding Batman villain to nearly every disorder, which isn't great. No, it's very bad. It's for every disorder, there's a super villain. For example, the Joker has psychosis, and so does the Green Goblin. And in disorders, they were all murderers from British soap operas or Hurley from Lost. Those were the only categories. That's it. Those are the only people that they listed on Wikipedia that had psychosis in media. That's not good. That's not good. Yeah, it had a face, and it's simultaneously clever with air quotes around it and disgusting that whenever somebody has a character with two motifs going on, they immediately think, oh, I'll give them bipolar disorder. This is a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's bad.
And I'm thinking Two-Face is more of a split personality rather than bipolar, since that's I think a more accurate thing. But the fact that he was on the Wikipedia for bipolar for a character who's more likely to have split personality just demonstrates how little there is known about bipolar disorder.
Yeah, it's great.
He's literally got two faces. That's pretty split personality-wise.
Yeah.
To be fair, it has changed once. The story of the Joker. He went from having an accident with toxic serum to going slowly insane from being in an asylum. Let's not forget in the most recent interpretation of Batman Gotham, the series, he had a minor case of a mental disorder, went to an asylum for help, and came back worse and murdered a lot of people.
No, that's
I have known multiple people who have gone through like psychiatric ward type help, have lived in quote unquote asylum, and they have come out like stronger and better people. One of my friends who like very nearly ended their own life because of a psychological disorder went to a full-time home to help them, and now they're the happiest they've ever seen them. They have a very loving relationship. They're like a poster child for what a mental institution such as an asylum can do for people. All right, on that same topic of autism representation, one of my personal favorite video games of all time is To the Moon. It is a story of these two people who are, and throughout going back through time, they discover slowly that he fell in love with a woman named River, who was autistic. And one of the main things about this is a lot of autism representation is passed off as a joke, like Sheldon, like Evelyn said, but she's very accurately portrayed. They go through the process of her getting help to help her overcome her issues, such as like one of her things is she could not stand the sound of a ticking clock, so every clock in the house didn't tick. They took her to the equine therapy where they had her ride horses, and it was really like heartwarming to see her at the time boyfriend, now husband, help her through these times and accept her, while I'm guessing a general population would not be as keen to dealing with any type of extra treatment that would come through this disorder. But to see him so willing to help her was really touching, and I will admit I cried playing that game. It was great. Continuing the discussion of positive representation in media and how it has a positive effect, it also helps build empathy, which is something that it doesn't at the moment. People don't really feel empathy for people like the Joker who have these mental disorders and are evil.
because they're not meant to.
Because they're not meant to. They're meant to be demonized. But if there was a positive representation of people with mental illness, then I expect that people would be like, oh, this good guy character is good and also has a mental illness, so maybe not all people who are mentally ill are psychopathic murderers. What an odd coincidence. But yeah, I think that's one way that positive representation could help. Another one is I've seen multiple accounts online talking about their personal experiences, talking about how even coded characters with mental illness, and coded not meaning accidental, but meaning not explicitly stated because of censorship, but even seeing coded characters having such positive experiences despite their coded mental illnesses really brings them joy and gives them hope of like, this is something good that can happen even though there is this mental illness. It is very uplifting and helpful for people, especially with people with depression who like their entire disorder is built around lack of hope and just like perma sadness. Seeing that hope and like not cure but like getting better is possible is extremely helpful for these people. And yeah, it's just there needs to be more positive representation in general.
To build on what Marley was saying about empathy, not to be rude to Marley, but the fact that psychopathic killer is a commonly used phrase really shows that we don't have empathy for people who have psychosis and other symptoms like that. And we equate them with certain things that aren't even part of the disorder. Like when I say psychopathic killer, you automatically think, oh, no empathy, crazy person. When in reality, psychosis is mostly characterized by hallucinations, I believe, and paranoia, which not murdering people. It's not. It's just genuinely not. And it's more, quote unquote, scary mental illnesses that are more associated with danger were represented properly. It'll probably make things safer for those people and feel less stigmatized, and they can be open about their illness to their friends and have an overall better quality of life without having to lie about their mental illness because people find it off-putting. Additionally, this bad representation isn't just limited to popular media. Of course, I just want to touch on briefly that it is pervasive in just normal media, where the news will stress the mental illness of a criminal instead of anything else about them. If somebody is behaving in a way that we consider not to be normal, many people will just immediately equate them with mentally ill people, regardless of whether that's accurate to the actual situation or even accurate at all. And that's also important to acknowledge when talking about mental health in media.
All right. Now that we're done talking with all of those negative effects of negative representation, we're going to move on to positive effects of positive representation. So I personally have struggled with a few different mental disorders, and I have a very strong feeling that if I had seen it properly represented with correct symptoms, I would have been able to recognize it earlier. If I had seen somebody getting proper treatment, I could have known that treatment was available, and I wouldn't have suffered so long. I'm personally a big Netflix binger. I watch so many things. If I had even seen just one correct representation, I feel like that could have helped me a lot, and it would help a lot more people to see this representation.
Anyway, I'm sure most people who are teenagers are familiar with the new Netflix series 13 Reasons Why, which is incredibly inaccurate. It's in fact so terrible that before they made the show, they asked experts, how could we do this correctly? The expert said, don't do this, and they did everything they were told not to do. For example, they were told not to actually show suicide on screen because it might glorify it, but no, of course, it was shown on screen despite literal professionals.
I would like to point out as well that they changed the method of suicide from the book to the show to make it more graphic. In the book, she took some pills and went peacefully, but in the show they graphically show her slitting her own wrist in a bathtub and having her mom shake her dead body.
Yeah, it's meant to be traumatizing and moving, putting air quotes around that, instead of what it really was. It was sad because it was real instead of an overblown dramatization. And though it was sad in the book because she died at all, instead of it being a over-dramatization. And as someone who's read the book, the message, though it tries to be treat everyone with compassion because you don't know what they're going through, if a depressed person is reading this, the message turns into, if you methodically blame a bunch of other people for your mental illness, they'll feel bad. If you guilt trip people and manipulate them, they will learn. If you kill yourself and blame other people, they will be the ones that feel the brunt of it. And that's extremely harmful. In fact, there have been accounts of suicide rates in high schools going up, and people, in fact, telling each other that, oh, you'd be in my tapes, or you will be in my tapes. And that's extremely harmful. We see direct suicide spikes because of shows like this.
I know one person in particular whose name I will not mention, who specifically mentioned 13 Reasons Why when explaining to their therapist why they tried to commit suicide very recently. That's a very direct example of this. They mentioned that seeing how they could use their own death, which they already wanted from being suicidal and having mental issues, how they could use what they wanted to do to finally get the not attention, but the emotional reaction that they had been feeling like they needed and were deprived of. And the fact that this was mainly caused by this show is horrible. I understand what the show was trying to do, but they did it incorrectly, and they really should have listened to those specialists that they consulted.
Furthermore, there's been rumors about a second season of 13 Reasons Why, which further goes to show that they don't particularly care about what experts have to say, because that goes past the book, that goes past what the original message of the author is, into how much money can we make after teen suicide. It's the Heathers' worst timeline. The Heathers did a slightly better job portraying suicide than this, and that was a murder comedy where two kids go on a killing spree. Okay, that's how bad some of our modern representation has turned, to the point where 80s horror comedies are slightly better. And that's not to say that Heathers is good representation of suicide, because it is very much not. It's just better than 13 Reasons Why. Yeah, and it's not specific to the show. It's definitely a problem with the overall message of the book. That definitely goes into why the manipulation of people is okay. While the book doesn't want to like say it's okay, they don't take any lengths to encourage people who are depressed to actually go for help. And as someone who reads the book as a depressed person, it is hard to shake the notion that if you kill yourself, people will feel bad, and the people you want to feel bad will feel really bad for the way they treated you. It's not a good message for depressed people, and it's not a good message for mentally healthy people either.
So we've been talking a lot about like how mental health, like inaccurate and accurate representation helps and hurts people. So what we're going to do to like help people, because we can't just make all media good or bad and just have every representation just accurate and everything just by ourselves. So what we're going to do is on our blog, we're going to put examples of good and bad representation and sort of rate like movies or TV shows or even books, anything like in the entertainment or anything in popular media, and just rate it for how it accurately portrays by doing some research beforehand and then just rating it. Just sort of like how like gender is represented. Like there are plenty of websites that sort of rate movies depending on like if two women interact. Like it would be something like that. And then it would help people find like better interpretations and decide what to watch and what to think about, and like to remind others that, hey, this isn't what people with this mental disorder are actually like, and things like that. And with the help of some viewership, it will gain traction and more people will think about this issue.